The desert waits like a silent accomplice, its endless sands guarding secrets too heavy for daylight. Beneath that vast and unforgiving emptiness lies a story buried so deep, so carefully erased, that most would never dare whisper it aloud. But tonight, we tear open the silence. Tonight, we unmask the forbidden truth of a man who claimed he stood face to face with technology not of this earth and was punished for telling the world. This is not folklore. This is not rumor. This is the chilling account of Bob Lazar, the man who lifted the veil on Area 51 and its hidden facility S4, and who revealed that the government may be hiding 9 alien spacecraft in the desert of Nevada. His words sparked decades of fear, outrage, and betrayal, and his story, once unleashed, could never be buried again. Today, we dive into the man behind the mystery. Robert Scott Lazar, a name that should have faded into obscurity. A man who once tried to blend into the background, who tinkered with rockets on bicycles and dreamed of nothing more than working with machines that defied human limits. Born in 1959, raised in Coral Gables, Florida, Bob was never destined for quiet simplicity. His life tilted toward the strange from the start. Explosions, lasers, engines, anything that bent the rules of ordinary life drew him like a magnet. But nothing prepared him for what the desert would demand of him decades later. By the early 1980s, Lazar had moved west. He claimed work at Los Alamos National Laboratory, dabbling in projects that required discretion. Some records suggested he existed there. Others erased him entirely. A man in the system, but not of it. Already, shadows pressed against the edges of his life, as if his very history were being rewritten in real time. And then, in 1989, the world would meet him not as Bob Lazar, but as Dennis, a faceless whistleblower cloaked in silhouette on a Las Vegas broadcast. His voice distorted, his identity hidden, his words a detonation. He said the United States government possessed 9 alien craft. He said they were stored at a facility called S4, carved into the mountains near Papoose Lake, just south of Groom Lake in the infamous Area 51. He said he had touched one, studied one, and been tasked to reverse engineer the propulsion system of a machine that bent space and time itself. 9 craft, hidden in hangars disguised as rock. One of them, sleek and metallic, shimmered as if it absorbed light. He called it the sport model. It didn't fly like our aircraft. It didn't burn fuel. It didn't roar with thunder. It hummed with power. It fell through space instead of moving through it. And it ran on something impossible, an element no one had ever heard of. Element 115. This was not speculation. This was a man speaking with the calm precision of a scientist who had stood inside the belly of the unexplainable.
He spoke of hand scanners that measured bone length, decades before biometrics were public. He spoke of small chairs built for beings barely 4 feet tall. He spoke of a reactor the size of a basketball that generated a gravitational field so strong it bent light around it. And he said the government had known since the 1940s, since Roswell, since the day the desert swallowed metal not made by human hands. The reaction was immediate: outrage, disbelief, fear. His educational records gone. His employment history erased. Skeptics screamed fraud. Believers whispered cover-up. But through it all, Lazar never changed his story. Not once. Imagine it. You see the impossible. You walk among machines that hum with alien silence. You feel the air vibrate with technology that mocks Newton and Einstein. And then you're told, never speak, never breathe a word. The punishment? Erasure, discrediting, surveillance, death if necessary. Lazar cracked under the weight. He couldn't keep the silence. He invited friends into the desert, told them where to look. On Wednesday nights, when the sky burned with secret tests, they saw glowing orbs dart above Papoose Lake. They saw the impossible with their own eyes. They filmed it. Shaky lights, yes, but proof that something moved in the skies without wings, without sound, without inertia. And then the hammer fell. Security intercepted them, armed men, spotlights in the desert, confiscated cameras, threats whispered sharp as knives. Lazar's clearance was revoked, his phones tapped, his home stalked by silent vehicles idling in the night. He was told he had crossed a line that no one crosses twice. So he did the only thing left. He went public. George Knapp, an investigative journalist at KLAS, gave Lazar a platform, first anonymous, then revealed. And in May of 1989, the world heard words it could never unhear. The United States government is in possession of alien spacecraft. The broadcast ignited a storm. Overnight, Area 51 became legend. S4 became the new holy grail of conspiracy. And Bob Lazar, a man who never wanted fame, became the lightning rod of the UFO debate. But here's where the dread begins to twist tighter. Because if Lazar was a liar, why did details keep surfacing that aligned with his testimony? Take the hand scanner. He described it in 1989, mocked for decades. A device that measured hand bones with light to confirm identity. Science fiction, they laughed. Then years later, photographs surfaced of that exact technology in use at secure facilities. The scanner was real, or Element 115. At the time, it didn't exist on Earth. Then, in 2003, scientists synthesized moscovium, atomic number 115. It decayed in milliseconds, yes, but Lazar insisted the stable isotope wasn't of this planet. It couldn't be made in our labs. It had to be found elsewhere. Coincidence? Prediction? Or proof? The story digs deeper.
Inside the sport model, Lazar claimed were 3 gravity amplifiers arranged in a triangle beneath the floor. They bent space-time itself, focusing waves like lenses, pulling the craft forward not by thrust, but by collapsing the space ahead. Imagine falling endlessly into a hole that moves with you, dragging reality itself along. That's how they traveled, not across the sky, but through it, into it, around it. And if that's true, then humanity has been sitting on the key to interstellar travel for over half a century. A key hidden, silenced, kept from you, from me, from everyone who wonders why we still cling to rockets that explode like fireworks while something silent and perfect waits beneath the Nevada sands. Why hide it? Power, control, weaponization, energy independence ripped from the hands of oil cartels, industries, governments.
Imagine reactors no larger than a football, eliminating the global energy crisis overnight. Imagine weapons that bend gravity itself. Imagine control over who travels the stars and who never leaves the ground. Does that sound like something they'd share with you, or something they'd bury under layers of secrecy so deep that even its witnesses are erased? Bob Lazar says they tried to erase him. His school records? Gone. MIT? Vanished. Caltech? No trace. Yearbooks without his name. Employment files at Los Alamos? Erased. But then, a phone directory surfaces. A photograph of him standing by a particle accelerator. Proof he was there, at least in some capacity. Proof that he existed where they swore he never was. Erase a man's past, and you erase his credibility. That was the weapon. Discredit him, and the truth dies with him. But it didn't, because Lazar never backed down. He never changed the details. 35 years later, the story remains, word for word, the same. Still, the world turned against him. He was arrested in the 1990s for aiding a prostitution ring, a charge many believe was engineered to smear him further. Regulators targeted his small scientific supply company, United Nuclear. Packages opened, orders delayed, inspections constant. A campaign of quiet harassment, not with bullets, but with whispers. And yet, he endured. Why? Why keep telling a story that destroyed his life? Why repeat the same tale for decades with no book tours, no cash grabs, no UFO convention circuits? Why not cash in? Because, he said, it wasn't about belief, it was about memory. It's not about belief. It's about what I saw. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. Do you feel the weight of that? He wasn't asking for faith. He was offering recollection, burned into him like a scar. And then the world shifted. In 2017, the New York Times revealed the Pentagon's secret UFO research program, AATIP. Videos released showed Navy pilots chasing objects that defied physics. No wings, no heat signatures, instant acceleration, no visible propulsion.
They moved exactly like the craft Lazar described. The echoes were undeniable. Former intelligence officials whispered of materials not made on Earth. Congress demanded briefings. NASA admitted interest in UAPs, and through it all, Lazar's words resurfaced. His testimony, once mocked, suddenly aligned with the whispers of power. Skeptics still call him a fraud. But ask yourself this: how does a fraud describe decades ahead of time the exact behavior of craft now filmed by the US military? How does a fraud describe hand scanners that turn out to be real? How does a fraud predict an element that later appears on the periodic table? Maybe he was lucky. Maybe he fabricated just enough jargon to sound convincing. Or maybe he was telling the truth. And if he was, what does that say about the silence that followed? About the decades of ridicule, erasure, and fear? About the governments who chose secrecy over revelation? Think carefully. If you had proof that humanity was not alone, would you share it? Or would you guard it like the ultimate weapon, hidden in the desert while the world above argued over scraps of power? Lazar claims he read briefings that the craft were not just recovered technology. They were ancient, passed between governments, some from crashes, others from deals struck in silence with entities not of this earth. The name Zeta Reticuli whispered in those pages like a ghost. If true, then the cover-up is not 30 years old. It is 80. It is 76. It is as old as Roswell, and perhaps older still. For decades, Lazar faded into reluctant silence. He ran his business. He avoided interviews. He lived in the shadows of what he revealed. Then, in 2018, Jeremy Corbell's documentary brought him back, and the world, now softened by Pentagon disclosures, listened with new ears. Lazar looked older, worn, weary, but unchanged. The story had not shifted, not a word. He said he regretted coming forward, not because he lied, but because of what it cost him, his reputation, his safety, his peace. It wasn't worth it, he admitted quietly. But yet, he said he wouldn't change it. Because some truths, once seen, must be spoken. Do you feel that contradiction? The weight of a man both destroyed and defined by a truth too large for silence. And maybe that's why his story lingers like a ghost over the desert, not because of saucers or science, but because it asks a question that gnaws at the edges of your sanity. What if he was right? What if there are 9 alien craft sitting under the Nevada desert, guarded by men who would kill to protect them? What if the energy crisis was solved before you were born and locked away? What if the universe has already reached out to us and we turned away? Every night, the desert wind whispers these questions, and every night, Bob Lazar remains the man who could not bury what he saw.
So the next time you look up at the stars and feel the pull of the unknown, remember the sport model. Remember the amplifiers. Remember Element 115. Remember the man who said, "It's not about belief, it's about what I saw." And ask yourself, what if? Because the story is not finished. The desert still holds its silence. The mountains still hide their doors. The sky still flickers with lights no human hand commands. And somewhere, in the quiet between breaths, the forbidden truth waits. And if Bob Lazar was right, then the silence above us is not emptiness, it is presence, watching, waiting, and preparing for the moment when secrecy is no longer enough. Until then, the whisper remains, and the truth, terrifying and undeniable, is this: we are not alone. We never were, and the proof has been buried in Nevada for decades. Good night.